Denry Nuff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can't recall in my almost 8 years in this Parliament a motion that has sparked so much emotion and even drama. Mr. Speaker, ever since it was mentioned that the government would be faced with a motion of no confidence from the opposition, that motion, or talk of the motion, sparked debate all over the country. The bus drivers were talking about it. Political commentators were talking about it. People on the street corners were talking about it. And individuals attempted to encapsulate the spirit of the debate to ensue in their own words. And the one that resonated most with me, Mr. Speaker, came from an operative of the United Workers' Party. He summed up his reading of the intended debate by referring to it as a virtual parliamentary lolobeth. And for those of us who understand what a lolobeth is, Mr. Speaker, anytime you are going to be smacked with a lolobeth, it means that you are going to be tortured and severe pain will be inflicted on you. When one considers what has happened in this chamber today, it appears, Mr. Speaker, that the government has been very reckless with their lolo.
Honourable member for Denry North. I know we are dual language country. We have our Creole, but let me remind you that Section 6 of the Standing Orders, it says proceedings and debate of the House, inclusive of the records of such proceedings, shall be in the English language, provided that a member may offer occasional explanation in Creole. That's what it says. And so, I'm not telling you don't make reference, but you've not in English said what it is. So, if you just keep it to that language, we know there are so many other associated English interpretation to that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, the point I was trying to make is that given what has gone on in this House today, one would have thought that it is the opposition who ought to have been on the back foot as it relates to this motion. But Mr. Speaker, I want to move on in the interest of time. Mr. Speaker, today is historic in so many ways, a historic sitting. Historic in the sense that today will undoubtedly, for many, many different reasons, go down in the annals of our history as perhaps one of the liveliest parliamentary sessions we've had. And it would have been remiss of me, Mr. Speaker, to perhaps just sit down and allow the debate to go on without making a contribution. But that would have been a gross dereliction of my parliamentary duty had I relegated myself to a mere bystander. And today, Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the people who sent me, the people of Denry North, the constituency that encompasses the communities of Olio, Gadet, Denny Riviere, Belmont, La Pelle, La Ressource, Despin, Richford, Grand Riviere, and Grand Ravine. All rural communities which have been defined and characterized by a hard-working people, a loyal people, a proud people. And it is in their interest and in their name, Mr. Speaker, that I have discharged my responsibilities in this Parliament for 7+ years. Mr. Speaker, today I find myself in a position where I must invoke or quote the Irish scholar of the 18th century, Edmund Burke, who once said, and it is a quote that has been used with telling effect by the former Barbadian Prime Minister Owen Affer, something has happened among us about which it is difficult to speak, but about which it is impossible to remain silent. Difficult to speak in the sense that given the frequency with which the Prime Minister has been admonished, criticized, warned, and even counseled about his leadership of this country or lack thereof, yet he continues to unleash a governance style which many have referred to in conversation with me as being reckless, wasteful, divisive, vengeful, and most of all, a leadership style, Mr. Speaker, that if not confronted head-on, will continue to do irreparable damage to the social and economic fabric of our nation. Hence, the motion of no confidence. Mr. Speaker, it is impossible for me to remain silent in this chamber today. It would be a grave injustice to the people of Denry North, whose interests I represent in this parliament, and people who are impacted daily by the policies of this government. And the policies have very, very little impact on my constituency and the people whom I represent. And so today, Mr. Speaker, I stand to give my full support to the motion of no confidence as presented by the leader of the opposition and member for Castries East. St. Lucia deserves a better Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, je voulais pour l'occasion, à la behalf de Denry North, pour dire que je supporte la motion que le leader de l'opposition a portée en Parlement, qu'il a dit que manière Premier ministre là, Jacques gouverner le pays, il n'est pas à l'intérieur du pays nous, et que les agents venus qu'on nous besoin en l'autre monde pour faire travail Premier ministre. Mr. Speaker, this is not a position that I arrived at yesterday. This is not a position that I'm assuming because I am one of the 6 in opposition and as a result of the motion coming from our side that I am duty bound to support it. Today, I speak with conviction because I know that I am speaking from the heart. I know that I'm expressing the concerns of the people of Denry North. This Prime Minister needs to go. The Prime Minister needs to be replaced. St. Lucia needs a new Prime Minister, and we need him or her now. Mr. Speaker, it is a view or position that is shared by a vast majority of St. Lucians, both at home and abroad. The teachers believe so. The farmers are of the same opinion. The police share that view. Members of the opposition are convinced, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister needs to be replaced. Some die-hard supporters of the UWP with whom I have interfaced, they too are saying yes, they love their party. They have said to me, some of them, that they cannot see themselves joining ranks with the St. Lucia Labour Party, but they are quick to admit that the UWP that they knew and the Prime Minister, the quality of Prime Ministership that the UWP provided, what obtains today is at variance with what they have been accustomed to from their own party. And very interestingly, Mr. Speaker, there are members on the government side who are here today. They too have consistently, some of them, and others in more recent times, have expressed similar sentiments to what we are experiencing today. L'animum parlement ici aujourd'hui, et parmi toutes les autres là où vous fait, vous avez d'autres les pieds yo toujours dit nous that yo pas content manière Premier ministre la gouverner. Yo j'ai d'accord avec nous that c'est parti yo qui en power et que yo pas veut perdre power mais yo pas content manière Premier ministre la gouverner. Et ça c'est une position comme dit Mr. Speaker, police, docteur, nurse, teacher, en pile moun dans pays a cadeau oui, even moun qui vote by parti Flambeau that yo veut parti yo rester là mais yo pas quoi Premier ministre là ka travail en l'intérieur pays ça. We have had frank conversations with some members of the UWP cabinet who are here today. Frank conversations with them. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? I want to give them the most solemn of assurance that the confidentiality with which we spoke will never be breached or be disregarded today. I will not mention names, but the pronouncements were made, and I want to applaud them, Mr. Speaker, for being able to put country, at least in conversation, before party and before self. Mr. Speaker, l'année moun en gouvernement, nous avons parlé et puis nous avons dit nous, les nous en meeting, that nous d'accord et puis nous, that bail ça fait différent par Premier ministre là, mais je dis à des gens qui viennent ici, et nous avons try faire moun comprendre that il n'y a pas de pièce problème et puis Premier ministre là. Mr. Speaker, some of them may have benefited from a ministerial upgrade. Maybe some have gotten increased allocations for their departments and agencies. I don't know. Maybe some have gotten more authority and more autonomy as it relates to the agencies that are in their name. But Mr. Speaker, the one thing I know is that every single one of us in here, irrespective of the political party we represent, we have a moral obligation to put country before party and before self. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, when some of them said that they cannot be bought, I believe them. And I believe some of them meant it sincerely. I salute them for that. I salute them for their bravery and for their patriotism. But I will insist, nothing that was spoken about behind closed doors will be disclosed here today. Mr. Speaker, I look around in the chamber and I see on both sides of the political divide men and women who are capable of doing a much better job than the current Prime Minister. And I mean that sincerely, on both sides. I look across and I see maybe 3 others, Mr. Speaker, who would do a better job. And as the member for Labrie said, this is not personal. This is not personal. The future of our country is at stake. Nous pas qu'à dire ces bagailles ça là because nous pas content Premier ministre là. Il pas votre Premier ministre là qui nous content et qu'on monde et nous pas content. C'est ça nous qu'a dit. Comme monde qui a conduit le gouvernement à dans ces programmes like policy qu'a point, yo pas en l'enterrer Jean cette ici. Et nous en les side ça là. Nous pas une pièce difficulté. Si yon moun en les side gouvernement ça a tapé choisi pour y placer Premier ministre là qui là. Et moi dis Mr. Speaker, that les moi regarder en dedans ici là ni moun tous les façades qui ça fait en premier job et moi dit ça la vérité. Mr. Speaker, in almost 3 years at the helm, 3 années depuis ce Premier ministre. Premier ministre là par Kakopan. The Prime Minister does not seem to understand that he is more than just the leader of the United Workers' Party. He has to honor his commitments to his party as leader. That is first, that is important. And the same is true for the leader of the opposition. He has to take care of his party. But when you are the Prime Minister of a country, when you are at the helm of the government, your responsibilities ought to transcend narrow party lines, narrow political boundaries, and narrow political or party interest. Mr. Speaker, being Prime Minister is no ordinary job. It comes with a tremendous responsibility. Premier ministre, ce n'est pas un bagay qui aisé. Mais, Premier ministre, ce n'est pas même comme un monde qui a joué au football. So, on y 11 moun dans le fil. Et si on n'a pas qu'à jouer bien aujourd'hui, ou ça tire, et ou ça mène pour jouer demain. The future of our country is too important for us to adopt or embrace that kind of approach to the prime ministership of our country. And as I said earlier on, Mr. Speaker, the position that we've taken, the views and the concerns being expressed today are not just concerns and concerns that reside only on this side of the House, but in private and in the quiet moments, members opposite, they too share similar concerns. The Prime Minister is supposed to set the tone for the country. The Prime Minister ought to lead from the front. The Prime Minister must be an example. And when you see a Prime Minister, you ought to see a country through him. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, this is not meant to be personal, but the current Prime Minister has dropped the ball and he has not fulfilled his duties effectively. Mr. Speaker, he had a very solid mandate coming into this office. He could have changed a lot of things. But from very early, the Prime Minister appeared to have lost his focus. Either listening to the wrong people, or maybe inexperience caught up with him. But Mr. Speaker, when you have a Prime Minister who has a preoccupation with a horse racing track, where a horse racing track can come before primary and secondary healthcare facilities in the country, you know you have a serious problem. And this cannot be a concern only for the members of the opposition. There are members who are sitting on the other side. And you know, through you, Mr. Speaker, that this can never be right, and you do not condone it. But it is politically expedient for you to come here and sit and cheer your Prime Minister up, because tomorrow you will be minister, because tomorrow you have an election to win. And then the poor people of this country continue to suffer. And if that, Mr. Speaker, cannot be reason for us to stand in this House and to highlight those concerns, all of us need to pack our bags and go to our homes. Mr. Speaker, you know what is interesting? We were forewarned. We were forewarned. And it is something I've said before. People say to me, but why are you, as an opposition or St. Lucia Labour Party MP, interested in the leadership battles or leadership conversations of the UWP? You have to be. And similarly, I expect United Workers' Party supporters to have an interest in the leadership battles, and there's none at the moment, and I don't foresee one coming soon. But they have to have an interest in the leadership of the St. Lucia Labour Party, because ultimately, when the party wins, whichever wins, that leader becomes the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. That particular individual becomes the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. But we were forewarned. And it's very interesting that I'm hearing the voice of the member, through you, Mr. Speaker, of Grosile, because he was one of the first persons to warn us when he said on a talk show that the current Prime Minister should have been allowed in the political fray only to organize, because what he brings is business experience, and that a political organization needs a politician to head it. And he can stop me on a point of order and say he did not say it on a particular talk show. We were forewarned. We were forewarned. We were forewarned. And today, Mr. Speaker, we have to live with it. I do not come to Parliament because I have any personal agenda. I don't come to Parliament looking for favors or looking for praise. I come here to speak on behalf of the people of Oleon, the people of Gardet and Belmont and Denier Riviere, who have been without a health facility for close to 3 years after the health center was destroyed by fire. And Mr. Speaker, it's not a question of when. If you can find in excess of $20 and $40 million to build a horse racing track, and you cannot repair a health center for less than $300,000, you have a serious problem. A serious problem. And the money was in the estimates. It was in the estimates.
On the point of order, Mr. Speaker, the member from Dennery North is again misleading the House. The government has spent no $20 million on building any horse racing track. It's a private investment. It has been repeated over and over. And I really would like the member to withdraw that statement because it is clearly misleading.
Honorable Member Dennery South. Denrino, sorry.
Yeah.
Denrino, sorry. That, and I think you would well accept that the Prime Minister, and as always, what is debated in this House, that the horse racing track is a private matter and that the government has not found $20 to $40 million to invest in that. So, Honorable Member, I would ask that you withdraw that particular statement.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw the statement. But what I will say, Mr. Speaker, is that I cannot be at peace with myself as a parliamentary representative, driving to Vieux-Fort and to see work going on at a horse racing track. At the same time, the Larissos Health Center cannot be repaired. Mr. Speaker, where have our priorities gone? Yes, you shout 5 years, but as the member said this morning, we paid the consequences. That is why you were elected, to do it. Not to come and say 5 years or we were there. It is your responsibility to get it done. And I'm saying to you that the people of Dennery North and by extension the people of St. Lucia deserve better health care. And we cannot, Mr. Speaker, accept that we were there and we never did it. It is your responsibility to do it. You were elected to do it. You promised to do it. You said you were going to do it. And up to a day like today, you cannot get started. And you're just going to hide behind a statement you were there. That is unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. And the Prime Minister, he has a fixation against people who question or who ask for dialogue and discussion on matters of national interest. Civil society organizations have been attacked. The doctors have been attacked. The Archbishop was attacked. An engineer who came and gave an independent opinion on a hospital facility, he was attacked. The Blind Welfare Association was deprived of subvention, National Trust, and so on, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, again must find myself standing on a point of order that the member is again trying to mislead the House. Nobody held back any subventions from the blind. In fact, we've increased the subventions to the blind. And again, Mr. Speaker, there are several other utterances that he's made that are clearly mischievous and intended to mislead the House and to mislead the general public. They have absolutely no truth on what has happened, and he knows that.
Particularly good, member. Subvention to the blind. Subvention to the blind, good sir. Blind Welfare Association.
Mr. Speaker,
So withdraw, please, sir.
my time is so important to me that anything I'm asked to withdraw here, I will, because I have so much to say. Mr. Speaker, in the words of a former Choiseul MP, you cannot have one club in the golf bag. You must embrace many, many more. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia belongs to all of us, and every opinion matters. And that is a problem with the Prime Minister. He is not supposed to be challenged. As opposition members who are representing the interests of our constituents and not forgetting 37,000 people voted for the St. Lucia Labour Party, we are expected to come here and just acquiesce to everything that comes from the other side. This is not how a democracy works. We have a right to challenge. Ek nou kay pale, ek jodia, nou un bon exemple, ko un gouvernement qui ni 11 moun en parlement, ek nou kon opposition ni 6 moun en parlement, yo ja essayé faire tout bagay qui possible pour empêcher nous parler. Tout bagay qui possible pour empêcher nous parler. Depuis les nous commencé bon matin, yo pas vle nous parler. Ek plan yo, c'est pour qui yo try pour faire tout bagay côté qui nous pas ça dit, ça nous vient ici pour dire bah c'est moun nous ka représenter. And you know what is sad about it, Mr. Speaker? A lot of the rural communities in our country are at the receiving end of these policies that are not in the best interest of the people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, talk about the banana industry. The banana industry. And whatever happens in the different ministries, you have to assume that it has the blessings of the Prime Minister. Nous te dit, or yo dit nous, that cette liste qui produit plus fig. Et là, il y a un gouvernement. Fig qui sorti quoi hier, les bas, qui dit pas bon. Et là, il y a plus fig. Et il y a aussi dit nous, Mr. Speaker, that fig qui a tapé, nous avons produit tellement fig en cette liste, nous avons 20 fig en France. Et vous savez ça, le Premier ministre l'a dit on social media page. I am very happy to inform you on the 3rd of June, 2016. I am very happy to inform you that I had a productive meeting earlier today with the Banana Association of Martinique and Guadeloupe. A new United Workers' Party administration will sign an agreement almost immediately upon assuming office that would allow for a new venture between St. Lucia and those associations. Comme moun kay van fig, bay Martinique et bay France. Et qui dit comme ça, yo a tué. Yo kay si argument pour faire moun van fig. A new administration, un gouvernement neuf. Il y a 3 l'année. Le gouvernement ça still neuf. Qui ça nous ka espérer pour nous ça signer argument ça pour faire moun fig. Et constituency moi c'est yon qui fig. Et tous les jours moi a venir ici à parler. Moi a dit rien gouvernement qui fait pour supporter fig. Moi comme membre parlement d'Henry qui supporter. Any intervention that the government embarks on for the banana industry, I will support. Mais ça me dit aujourd'hui, si vous savez pas ça faire bail, pas venir bail pharmacie ici, espoir mal papaye. Ou pas ça venir dire ou qu'il fait gros fig en France. Comme ça on qu'il fait argument ou Jean meeting. Et 3 l'année, quand 3 l'année au gouvernement, ou pour savoir yon pas de fig, yon gwen fig, yon régime fig monté en France. Pas faire moun ça. And you know what happens, Mr. Speaker? They come to my constituency office on a Wednesday. And I was very saddened when they suffered at the hands of tropical storm Cook, which flattened a lot of their farms and put most of the banana farmers out of production. And things are scruffy. And they're having a tremendous difficulty trying to get monies from the insurance company. So things are hard. And Mr. Speaker, on the heels of the government not delivering on that promise to cause them to export their fruit to the French territory, they have to deal with a situation where they're not being compensated for loss suffered during the passage of the weather system. Mr. Speaker, the distress fund, anti-l'argent. Now, les ou fait mistake, on need to admit that you have a mistake. There are times you have to admit that you've erred. I have stood in this house before and said erroneously that the distress fund was $4 million. That is wrong. It was only a paltry $480,000. Ko gouvernement qui mettait l'argent à son side, so les kay moun brûlé, moun qui pas d'insurance, moun qui a struggle pour acheter 10 sheet plywood, les kay yo brûlé, nous ka bayo anticipo pour virer bâti un kay, que yo sa weti ek issue. And every year, you read on social media, you hear it through the electronic media, that a house has been destroyed by fire in this community and that community. And when you do your investigation and your background check, the majority of people who suffer are people who can hardly fend for themselves. And that is where a caring government is supposed to walk and meet them halfway across the aisle. The distress fund was removed from the budget. How can that be right? And I've said before, maybe the Prime Minister does not understand that. And when I said that the last time, a particular member said it was a low blow. But I can never represent a community like Debarra, Deramo, Montciso, Zeno, Chateau-Belair, Oleon, Grand Ravine. The representatives of these communities have to stand up for these people. And by standing up is not the amount of noise you make, but you must take a principled position on these things. And when you do, you are not a traitor to your party. You are representing the best interest of your people, and that is why you were elected. And that must be at the forefront of your agenda. Ou pas satiller l'argent qui était là, et moi j'ai l'histoire ça avant. Quand yon nomme constituency moi, kay li brûlé. Et que les moi aller ouais kay ele because il va qui man qui bâti kay ça encore. Il pas ni l'argent. Il c'est un homme qui est pauvre. Et moi aussi premier ministre qui était là, là nous étions en gouvernement. Et que 2 mois après ça, nous là, nous avons un petit caille pour rester. Et à nous, nous avons fait quelque chose. Nous avons resté en belle caille. Mais là, nous allons dormir leur souhait. Comme politiciens, et comme monde qui s'est posé, quand travaille en l'intérieur pays, nous ni pour catcher about ces gens qui passent à faire bye bye koyo. Et que pas mendicants. Yo pas fait, c'est juste circonstances qui là dans la vie. Et que toujours un monde comme ça. Mais pièce pays qui progresse et qui fait progrès, solution là c'est pas pour tenir don les yo, dit yo pas payer insurance et qu'on pour faire bail qui grand. Et c'est là nous qu'a dépenser l'autre bail Mr. Speaker. Nous ni pour mettre ça ça pour aider ces gens. Nous attendons aussi qu'on ait un hôtel pour tax break $24 million. Nous attendons ça. Mais qui manière nous avons fait ça qui est un hôtel and tax break to the tune of $24 million. Et then nous avons l'école qui est dans l'état comme Mike a tapé mouillé de l'appli privée. Range 40-something million. At the same time, we are entering a bad agreement where we have to pay range, not $30-something thousand, you know, $1 million. We are going up to SAFA and tell the next generation of leaders, you know what, you have to pay more for your education. And when people started making noise, they pulled it back, Mr. Speaker. They pulled it back. We've heard about the laptop program. A particular member in this house on the other side discredited the laptop program and made it seem as if it was not necessary. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia, as a small island developing state without natural resources, can only compete competitively in a global environment based on the quality of the human resource base. And in a world that is driven by technology, it is very important that we expose our young people to the rudiments of technology at a very early age. And that was one of the main reasons why we instituted a laptop program. And I've said before that the laptop program, or giving children laptop computers on their own, will not cut it for us. And so, with the Taiwanese, we initiated the GINet program, where we're providing island-wide, we're about to provide island-wide Wi-Fi to the young people of this country. Because not every family, especially in the rural communities, have the resources to have a Wi-Fi package for their children. Mr. Speaker, playing fields are abandoned today. Abandoned. Young people have to come and get a container to go to the gas station to buy fuel and then get somebody for weed eater to cut the grass for them on playing fields. And that is happening at a time when millions of dollars have been secured for the Packer Company to develop sporting infrastructure. I am not against the development and upgrade of sporting infrastructure. I am not. But I'm saying it cannot happen at the expense of the little playing fields we have in the community. For two reasons. This is where children go to play and learn the skills at a very early age. And as they move up through the ranks and age group sport, the skills begin to be refined. People also go on the playing fields to recreate and to sweat. And there's a great need in this country for the citizenry to engage in physical activity, because we have one of the highest rates of chronic non-communicable diseases in the Caribbean and by extension in our hemisphere. But it is not important for these little playing fields to be cared for, but we can make millions available. The point has also been made in this parliament that there is nothing that the Packer Company brings to the table or to St. Lucia that cannot be provided by local expertise. Absolutely nothing. In terms of surface procurement, we have one of the best in the world in Kent Crafton. In terms of the infrastructure itself, we have architecture companies in St. Lucia who have produced quality facilities that at one time were the envy of the world. So, Mr. Speaker, all of these things I've mentioned are reasons why I cannot support the Prime Minister in terms of how he goes about handling the affairs of our country. And there's no sector whose expectations have been violated more than that of the young people of this country. In all areas, sports, education, the laptop program that I mentioned, proposed fees to be increased at SAFA. And then, Mr. Speaker, it almost broke my heart and that of the entire nation when we saw a primary school child from one of the schools in Castries reading a letter, I think, to the Prime Minister, lamenting the conditions at her school. Now, I'm realistic. I know every school cannot be attended to at the same time. I know there will be disparities in terms of the quality of infrastructure at some schools. But, Mr. Speaker, the priority is wrong. Some of the things that we spend the money on at this moment, that is wrong. Healthcare is in a state that it has never been in before. We've heard about the privatization of Owen King Hospital. Co-gouvernement vle tiye l'hôpital Owen King ek mette en la main ça va créer private interest. Difference between private interest et puis gouvernement, c'est pièce moun qui ni private interest, c'est moun business. Pièce moun pas quand en business because you compte community et bon compte pays. Pour mieux bail moun quand en business pour c'est pour faire un profit. Et là pour l'hôpital là, et ou mais private interest. Et qui plus mauvais le pas Jean cette ici because si c'est Jean cette ici, il kay dou moun nan qui vini acheter service qui sorti babono, oh moi connaître gomme main, so n'a qui te fait free. Là yo sorti que man ko yo sorti, yo pas connaître nous pièces. Et que là aller l'hôpital ko pas à payer pour kay vie ko sorti et si on pour mort les chimé, c'est là où kay mort. And that is why we can never support the privatization of the hospital. And what about nurses and healthcare professionals? We were told they probably had to resign and then reapply. And it's not just a situation, Mr. Speaker, where, okay, it's a simple thing, okay, let us just resign and reapply. Can you imagine the trauma and the discomfort that these people have to endure? I was speaking to a couple of nurses recently who have a little loan at the bank, and they're extremely nervous, and there are those who tell you because they're on contract, the lending institutions do not want to see them, let alone when they're being told in an environment of uncertainty that they have to resign and reapply for their jobs. Mr. Speaker, that cannot be right, and we have to stand up against those things. And if we cower, and we can't muster the courage to point out the things that are wrong with this government and the way the Prime Minister conducts the affairs of the country, Mr. Speaker, we will suffer the consequences as leaders. We all love our party, our respective parties. We are proud members of our respective parties. But there will always come moments in this political journey and ministerial journey where we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say objectively, speaking from the heart, that these are wrong, irrespective of which party we belong to. St. Lucia ought to be our primary focus and our primary concern. And until such time, we, as a collective in this parliament, yes, there will be debate, there will be back and forth. Yes, we will disagree on a lot of policy issues. But I think the situation is one that has been allowed to exacerbate for too long, and something has to give. I will repeat what I said at the beginning, Mr. Speaker. The confidentiality with which some members on the other side spoke to us in the days leading up to this meeting will never be breached. Not today, not in the media, not outside. But at least it is refreshing to know that some people are thinking in the best interest of this country and that they are prepared. As to whether they can muster the courage today to do what is right for country, that is left to be seen. But I am encouraged that not everybody sees everything from the same standpoint. St. Lucia ought to be the country that we love. And as we move, Mr. Speaker, closer to the celebration of a milestone independence year, as leaders, we need to think a little more about country. I made the point before. There are people in this house who are capable of leading, but we must admit that the country has taken the wrong direction. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the people of Dennery North, I want to give my most sacred forms of support to this motion as presented by the leader of the opposition.
Honorable
and the
member for Castries South, are you moving?
Mr. Speaker, I support the motion on behalf of the people of Dennery North. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.